Khalida. We're just honored to have you with us. The idea is, if you could tell us a little bit about your story, with special focus on entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship. Then we can talk maybe a little bit about women in entrepreneurship, and let's go on from there. Okay?
Perfect. Perfect. You're going to have to stop me in places where I go into too much detail because I just turned 31 and every year I add like 10 years of experience for some reason. So it just keeps getting really long. I think I've come to the point where people are like, okay, you need to write 10 more memoirs. There's just so much of it. I want to focus mainly on the entrepreneurship myself as well, because in my years of activism and in my years of fighting against honor killings, I feel like the 5 years of my time for entrepreneurship were the most impactful. And I say that even though it's been 15 years of my journey, I actually grew up in a very, very small village in Balochistan, in the mountains of, it's actually near Iran and Afghanistan. It borders Iran and Afghanistan, but it's in Pakistan. It was a very small village and we didn't have any education there. So my father took us to a slum community in Sindh province and educated us there. So I got to be the first elder girl who was educated and who got to see a different world, even though it was a slum community. But I think it really fascinated me to see that despite such poverty, we could have potential, we could have opportunity. And it took me a long time to understand that there's very big differences between the tribal communities and between the poor communities. In the tribal areas, people are poor as well, but they have their own rules and regulations. So they never actually feel very poor because they all help each other. And that's where the concept of honor and dishonor comes. People are so honored by taking care of each other, but at the same time, they feel like if their girl betrays them, they feel very dishonored. And then they actually act upon certain things, certain rules that they have set aside for themselves, where they kill their own daughters. So when I was growing up, I saw poverty, but at the same time, when I saw this whole concept of honor, I felt like that was what was my calling. I saw hunger. I saw so many diseases, issues. I was raised malnourished as well, but nothing compelled me so much towards women's rights as until when I saw that women were getting married young, they were getting exchanged in the name of honor. And one day when I was around 13 or 14, when my cousin was murdered in the name of honor. So that was the day I decided I'm gonna be on this journey. I'm gonna be working for women's rights. Starting that day around 2005, it has been about 15 years of this journey. I went through a lot of different processes. Because I was still a teenager, I was figuring out what was the best solution. And amazingly, of course, I had to try out every single thing where in the beginning, you know, as a teenager, you're just angry at everyone else. You feel like it's everybody else's fault. So that was the best thing. My anger was very useful to me. I kept being angry at the government, at my own father even, at the men in the villages. And this anger helped me try out many different things. If one thing wasn't working, my anger kept me to go try something else. For 10 years, my initiatives kept changing because one thing was failing, the other thing was working. And when that was failing, then I had to come up with something else. So by 2014, from 2005, I had come up with one idea in the end of the day, and that was to work with the women to give them a socioeconomic empowerment. And these were the women inside the tribal areas, inside these rural areas, who have never been educated, who are actually—
That's Shugar?
Yes, Shugar Foundation, through my nonprofit. And these are the women who are actually very strategically kept away from information. I don't know how to explain this, but so there are many ways to control women. Some societies do it very openly. They would be like, no, you can't go outside, or you have to wear a veil and cover your face. But then there's other ways to do it, which is the most scary part, where women are not told about the world, about their rights, about what actually Islam says about their rights. So they're kept in such dark that when you bring this education to them, they feel like, no, you're lying. So I remember the first time when we went to the women and we told them that in Islam, they're actually allowed to get divorced. And they thought we were saying the most scandalous thing, because the concept of divorce, the husband should beat you or whatever, but you cannot seek divorce, is their understanding. So from that day on, I made it my decision to not only give them this education, but also give them the power to either stay or to leave. They should have the power and income support to make their own decision. And since those 5 years, since 2015, we've been actually more successful in the last than the 15 years.
And how have you been able to get them out of poverty?
This is my favorite part. So we actually have a very strategic story to it. I say strategic a lot in my interviews because strategy has been a very big part of my journey. When I was very little, I have this story I tell everyone because I love it so much. I used to cry a lot whenever something would happen. My cousins would get married at a young age. And when I say young age, it's 9 or 13 years of age. So I would go and cry so much. I was going to a school, even if it was just a government school, but my friends were getting married in the mountains. So I would cry so much. And many times my father would come and catch me and he would hug me and he would be like, shh, my daughter, don't cry, strategize. And I used to be like, what is this? I don't like hearing this, you know, I want to cry. And as I grew older, I realized that he was right. He was right because no matter how many solutions you point to, you would just be pointing to those. No matter how many issues you point to, you would be pointing to those issues. Those issues are going to stay despite your complaints. But the day you strategize, you plan to do something about them, is the day you are going to be making some change. So from the first year when I started my journey through poetry as a teenager to the year current, in which we are working in these villages to give income support to these women, I feel like this last strategy has been the most effective. And this is where we go directly and work with the women. We go into a village. These are very small tribal villages, which are usually constructed by one tribe. So there's a head of the tribe, and then there's all these people who are part of the tribe. They're usually cousins, and they're related by blood of far extended families. So we go into this village and we work with the tribal leader in the beginning to get access to the women into the village. We started doing this actually very recently because we were realizing that the moment we go in and only work with the women, we create this kind of anger in men, or this problem where they start thinking that, you know, we are going behind their back and teaching women un-Islamic things. So when we go through the tribal leader, it becomes a much more impactful journey for us. So we go there and we work with these women, but instead of teaching them instantly, we create this center, a hub inside that village where these women come for 6 months to receive a training. And they don't receive this training by us. We actually train 3 women inside that village. We select these 3 women who are very good in different skills. For example, one of them might have already run some businesses. One of them is really well-spoken and everybody listens to her. She's kind of older, who everybody listens to. And then one of them would have already proved herself. She has gone to school or college. She's able to study and read. So we select these 3 girls and we train these 3 girls. Our main focus is on training them to become teachers inside this village, but teachers only for adult women. These 3 women then go back and give that 6-month training to their own peers. We started doing this as well just I think around 6 to 7 years ago, because in the beginning our team would go and teach these women. Our team would train the women for 6 months.
What do you train them?
Yes, so this is the main part. We train them into socioeconomic empowerment, the first woman. So there's 3. We train the first women to teach the women on how to create income from their own skills. For example, they have indigenous skills, how to use those skills to earn income in the Western community. And then we teach them basic education, like how to write their names and everything, but at the same time, about laws, what Islam says about their rights and what the Constitution says about their rights. So if they have an issue, for example, they have been sexually harassed in the villages, they can go to the police and claim under the policy saying, you know, I want to file a case against a cousin who did this to me. And then the third, we teach them how to run businesses, how to start businesses inside their villages from a very, very small amount of money. You see, the biggest thing that really made sense to me as I was growing older in poverty was that poverty usually stays within people for a long, long time. Poor people hardly make it to the middle class, and they make it through very hard situations. And that is because poor people rely on daily wages. They rely on the money that comes that day and that it gets spent. So we teach these women how to invest even from that daily wage, how to keep saving or investing in themselves to increase income for themselves. There's a huge 6-month plan that we follow, and these 3 women teach them. And by the end of the 6 month, these women receive a grant that they use to launch their own businesses, creating the small cycle of like shops, and one of them might even buy a goat and start selling the milk, very small things, but it kind of creates a local economy where people are helping each other and there's more jobs for everyone.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate your father. That's the first thing. Second, so if we had to say the 2 basic things would be entrepreneurship and education, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, and from your, sorry.
And we don't go into, for example, we don't go into the education as in like schooling them about mathematics and science and everything. We just want to make sure they're able to read, or they are able to understand when they're being tricked into something if they're launching a business. Because for business, a lot of people don't have to have full education to run their small business in the villages, but they need to know how to negotiate, how to price something, and how to earn a profit.
And if we wanted to learn from your experience and maybe even bring your model here, what would you say would be the most important aspects of it?
Ooh, that would be amazing. So we actually have been reached out by UN and a lot of other organizations to replicate this model to thousands of people. They want to take it to India, to Sri Lanka, where our communities are very much similar. And I believe in Chile, even we have a lot of similarities in the communities. I think the biggest benefit, when I came to Chile, I saw that women were educated already. Women knew what their rights were, they were more aware, and they had access to information. But at the same time, they didn't have the opportunities like financial opportunities to grow the ideas that they had. So if we're launching or replicating this idea into Chile, we would want to make sure that more and more women are given the resources to launch the ideas, to launch the businesses that they want to create.
Okay. Talking about your experience with your own social entrepreneurship in the States, what has been your greatest motive of happiness, to say it in some way?
So in 2015, I got married to my husband. He's the most wonderful human being. I mean, love was not part of my plan. I was like, I am never getting married. Men are evil. But then it all changed. It changed because I started to forgive, and I started to see the beauty in human beings and the potential that we all have to make a difference. But what happened is the moment we got married, David saw that what a challenge it is to be a Pakistani and to go through around the world talking about a country and about the beauties of a country which people only know through the news. So he was like, we're going to create a place where Pakistan comes to the United States. And in that way, we're also going to be giving income to the women who make these products. So we made a cafe first in Arizona, and we just used our wedding money. We had a celebration in the United States to bring all the friends and celebrate our wedding. We decided to cancel that and use that money to just launch our business. And it became so successful instantly. We serve people chai, it's chai tea. And at the same time, the women who make these products through my nonprofit, Shugar Foundation, we sell those products here. And then women receive not only the wages, but 50% of the profits from the social enterprise goes back to the women and to their children. So people just loved this idea. In Arizona, where we thought that we would receive so much backlash or people would not like the idea, we actually were welcomed very instantly. And then in 2018, we launched the second location of that place in Manhattan, which became even bigger thing. I mean, we were not actually ready for how big it would be. And more than anything, because I'm a village girl, I actually did not want to be in Manhattan that long. We got sucked in. And then next thing I know, I was speaking everywhere in Manhattan. And I'm like, I want to go back to my mountains. But I'm really grateful at the success of this social enterprise.
And what has, if you had to give some, if someone asked you about social entrepreneurship, what would you say would be the basics?
Oh, for example, to start something?
Mm-hmm.
So it depends. For example, if someone hasn't done any kind of entrepreneurship in their life, just like me, I mean, I grew up being told that if you want to run a business, then you're a bad person because you're thinking about earning money for yourself. So for most of my life, I actually thought it was an evil thing. I should only run my nonprofit and make sure that, you know, we are using funds to go to the villages, but nothing more than that. It was such a limiting idea. We couldn't grow very quickly. But the day, I actually want to tell this story. One night, a few years ago before my marriage, around 2014, I was sitting and working on a document for my nonprofit. I was writing and it was 1 a.m. in the night. Everybody my family was sleeping around me and it was very quiet. I was typing and then suddenly I heard someone cry out from outside of the window. I got up and looked outside, and corner of the street was a very, very little boy. In this dark night, he was sitting and he had closed his eyes and he was crying so loudly. And I saw him and I recognized him. This was the boy who works at a hotel, like they make food and sell the food. He's a very little, he was like 7 years old. He works there all day and then he gets beaten by the owner. He was crying there. And I realized to myself, my nonprofit is doing so much for the women. But at the same time, when I want to do more than that, when I want to give jobs and education to younger children and to grow, you know, our spread, I can't do that. I want to be able to create jobs for people. I want to be able to create scholarships for younger children. And that is the day I decided I would go into entrepreneurship. So if anybody wants to launch something, even though, yes, they should think about money, they should think that they have to use that money for something very specific. With that goal in mind, they would be more successful other than if they only think about the money.
Okay. And if we had to give some advice to large corporations, and we would speak about honor, how would you make those things come together? You speak a lot about honor in your book and in your talks.
So large corporations as in the multinational corporation?
Or large local companies, whatever.
Wow, that's a very, very big question. I think, and interestingly, I haven't been asked this question before because when we think about honor, we think it's such an individual thing. But it is true that it's actually part of everyone, every country and every corporation. I think when I would talk to huge companies who have big impacts, who are spending a lot of money on consumerism and, you know, even employing people, I want them to realize that at the end of the day, whatever they're doing, it has to have dignity. It has to, not only for the people who are working with them, those people should feel dignified when they walk into their jobs. But when someone purchases their product, they should also feel dignified. Because consumerism has become such a thing where half the people feel shame about buying something and half the people feel like they're selling their souls buying a product. But no one or very less people feel like I am so honored by being part of this company, or I'm so honored by shopping for this thing. And this kind of human instinct, human relationship has gone away from companies. So I would really want people to, companies to look into products that dignify people or into services that give people more honor and respect than they already do.
See, I ask you the question because in your TED Talk and in your book, and honor is a very big word for you, right? And somewhere, I don't remember where, I saw that you divided it like in 3 parts, right? And somewhere in between, you talk about corporations and how they have to work on these 3 areas. And I found it very interesting how that can be mixed with entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship, not only through dignity. That's why I'd like you to talk a little bit more about honor.
Of course. So you're talking about organizations in general?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think in my book, I talk a lot about how as organizations, even we can employ honor, and we can add that as part of our work. For example, in 2009, we had a huge backlash from what we were doing in the villages. And now that I think of it, I actually feel very sad for what we were doing, because we were on the streets yelling against these tribal communities, yelling against the men, of course, who were involved in murdering their own daughters. And we felt very justified. We were like, of course, this is the right way to do it. You should scream their names until they're put into jail. But soon after that, we received so much hate. We received so much opposition that we failed in those communities, and we had to stop for a second. After that, we created a new project called the Apology Project. And this was the first time when I saw what it means to actually apologize, what it means to involve people and give those people dignity whom you don't even feel like giving. Giving them respect actually allows them to see you finally. When we sat down with these tribal leaders who I hated before, and we told them, please forgive us for insulting you like this in front of the world. We are here to work with you because we know that your culture is much more than doing this with your women, than controlling your women. Your culture is about beauty, about songs and music and friendship. So when we talked to them like that, we finally saw that they're seeing us for the first time. They're seeing have a point. So that is what I want our the community see, that it's not just it should not just be their own understanding. They should go and involve those people who they're working with and see everything through their eyes. They would find a better solution.
Si alguien tiene que hacer una pregunta o quiere saber algo, levanten la mano y ningún problema y le damos la palabra. Bernie, ¿querías decir algo?
Hi. No, I am. How do you learn English? How do you come out from your village? Because I heard you in your TED, you are living in a poor village, but you have a lot of education. You're a lucky girl. Your father is a free thinking. How? What makes the difference that you can do that great thing today? I hope you understand.
Yes, that's a really good question, actually. So a lot of my story is about how we came out of the villages and how we went back to the villages. Because I think the best thing that happened in my life was that we never truly left who we were. I still wear my tribal dress, the embroidery, and I speak my tribal language at home. But still, at the same time, in the slum communities where I was raised, I went to a school. We actually didn't start learning English until a long time. But when I was growing older, I saw how important education was and how much my father emphasized on it. So he was like, you have to learn English. It's something very important. And so when we were growing older, we had one channel on our television. It was very small television, and all of our children would sit in front of it. And it was 1 hour of Disney Channel. And we were like, wow, that's such good English. So we would watch that. And when I was growing older, I wanted my English to be like that. So I started reading a lot of books. I read about 300 or 400 books within a few years. And then when still my accent did not improve, I kept on reading those books loudly. So this is actually one thing I suggest to a lot of young girls or young boys who want to improve their English, is reading the books loudly as if you're talking to someone, because around us, nobody really spoke English. So I was reading the books loudly, but at the same time, I also noticed that when we speak in our native language, it's a very dry language. We emphasize on D, T, ra. So we say those words a lot. So I decided to put chocolate in my mouth. For 2 years, I put chocolate in my mouth and I read loudly. So I created saliva in my mouth. And it sounded like this. And it kind of improved my accent.
I'm gonna start eating chocolate.
Yes.
You would become like this.
No, you're great. But your father was a freeman thinking man, was different than the father of your friends, because you don't have to get married. You don't have this duty.
Yes.
You
yes.
choose your husband. And what makes that different in your culture? What is the reason?
Okay, I'm gonna go into this. This is a long story, but I love this story. My father, so he ended up becoming a different man in his village because something happened when he was around 4 or 5 years old. So in the villages over here, people have a lot of children because they keep waiting for a son. Anytime they give birth, if it's a daughter, they want to have another child until sons are born. Because when sons are born, you can give them jobs at 4 years of age, 5 years, they start earning. Men are told that they have to start earning income for the family because they're the men of the house. So boys think that they're like capable of doing things when they're very little. My father was a shepherd when he was 5 years old. So he would go and take the sheep from the neighborhood families, and he would go with his friend on the mountain, and he would feed these sheep and bring them back in the night. He would spend all day there. I mean, he was a child. So a lot of times when they would go walking on the mountains, my father would think about everything in the world. He loved thinking. He didn't know what education was or what everything else was, but he loved thinking about what is outside the village, what is in the sky. He thought things like that. One day, when they were sitting on top of the mountain and all the sheep were just grazing in the field, my father was just sitting, or maybe he lied down. And when they got up, it was evening. And he found out that all the sheep were still. They were not moving and they were on the ground. When they got close to the sheep, there were around 12 or 13 sheep. They were so bloated because they'd overgrazed on alfalfa. They had eaten so much grass that they couldn't be saved. There was no doctor in the village who could save these sheep. So all the neighborhood's sheep died. And my grandfather, who was a very honorable man, he was recognized everywhere. People respected him. Suddenly, my grandfather received, all these people coming from the villages. They said, your son killed our sheep. That was our livelihood. This is what he did to us. So my grandfather got so angry. He got so ashamed that a son has betrayed him like that. A son has dishonored him. So he said, I'm going to punish my son. And I'm going to send him to the one place there where only shameful boys go. And that was to the school. And so my father got education. And he became a completely different man. He was like, this is amazing. These books are amazing. He wanted the same thing for his daughters. And that's how we got education.
What an incredible story.
Amazing.
Unbelievable. That's why I say again, congratulations for your father.
Thank you. Thank you. He's such a good man. I think both of them gave their whole life. They are very young now because they were married young. My mom was 9 years old. My father was around 13 years old. So now my mom is 48 or something, and my father is just turning 50, and they're like, oh, we are done. I'm like, oh my God, you're so young. But they act like they're very old.
Khalida, coming back to entrepreneurship, would you have a story for us, maybe in all the years you've been working with people, trying to help them get out of poverty, to inspire others to turn on to entrepreneurship as a means of escaping poverty?
Of course. So, for example, I have stories mainly from the tribal areas because that's where we see the impact, that's where we work. And amazingly, that's the most satisfying because you see these women who don't know anything about their rights, who actually, there's actually a very common thing, women don't laugh loudly, they're not allowed. So once they go through this training, not only they're expressing themselves, but they actually are like, we are gonna earn income for ourselves. In a village, so we border with India as well, and there are some minority groups who are Hindu communities, and they're very poor in the desert areas. So we started working over there, and I actually didn't know a lot about the Hindu values, so we were still learning and everything. After the training, we asked the woman, what do you want to do? What business do you want to launch? Because they have to make a verbal business plan because they can't write, and it's a very amazing process where they give you the whole plan saying, this is what I'm going to do with the money, this is how much I will earn. And she was like, I'm going to do a bangle shop. I'm like, what? But everybody, you know, everybody's poor, bangle shop, this doesn't make any sense. In a village where people are hungry, she's going to sell jewelry. And so we were like, okay, fine. So we gave her $150, which becomes a lot of money here. And it is amazing how that 150 changes their lives. So we went back after a few months, and we find out that she has become one of the top shops to go to in the village, because in the Hindu communities, if you're wearing bangles here and here, that means your husband is alive and he takes care of you. And if you're not wearing bangles, that means your husband is not alive. So anybody who wants to prove their husband is alive and they're happy in their life, they go and get bangles from her. And she was selling so much. And it really touched my heart how they think about these things, how innovative they become when it comes to entrepreneurship. And so many other small stories like that in these villages where we let them make the decision about what they want to do, and they surprise us each time.
And have you had cases when they have had to they had an idea, it didn't work, they had to do it again and again and again over time?
Yes, definitely. A lot of cases, actually. That's one of the issues we had in the beginning. We used to give them loans instead of grants. So we would give them loans, and then we would wait for those loans to be returned, and then we would give that loan to someone else. And it became such a hard thing because we received a lot of scrutiny from other organizations. They were like, how are you doing loans? Because, you know, these are poor people. And somehow I felt like loans were more dignifying, because I don't want these poor people to think that they are beggars or anything. And I kept on pushing that they should receive loans. But the truth is they were so poor that a lot of times these businesses didn't work, and they were unable to pay back the loan, especially because each time they think of an idea, it has to be innovative. We give them money based on the innovation, and we did receive failure. And then eventually we had to change the whole thing to a grant, and now they don't give us the money back.
Okay. Okay, would someone want to make a question before we I know it's almost 11 at night, so
It doesn't matter.
I don't want to impose. Would someone like to make a question? Okay, Khalida, I just wanted to thank you so very much for giving us some time. I think more than one of us is going to contact you, I don't know, in the upcoming months to see how we can try to bring what you do over there to some parts of our country over here. It would be great.
Oh, I'm so honored. And I would be able to actually give you the modules and everything we use, because we have a perfect model that can be copied everywhere. And my whole mission is, because I know that one nonprofit can't scale so rapidly, even though we are trying. We recently partnered with Disney, and we received a lot of support from them, and we received financial support from them as well. That means we can now reach to more thousands of people.
Who did you partner with? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Through
Disney?
to Disney, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Disney Channel. Yeah,
okay.
They're actually really amazing. I love talking to them about my childhood, and I think that's what they like.
Okay. That's why. The Disney Channel. That's perfect.
Yes. Yeah, so we are able to reach out to more, and I would be able to help you as well, and if anybody wants to reach out.
I'm thinking particularly in the south of Chile, in Araucanía. Okay, it's where we have smaller communities.
Right.
That might be interesting, and maybe in other parts of Chile as well. I don't know. We have to
That
study a
would
little
be-
bit about it, but it might be
you
good.
know, the best part about this that works everywhere is the fact that we teach 3 women, and these 3 women go and train the other women. And so we have a very technical thing. Every year, for 6 months, 1 woman gets trained from 1 house. The second year, the other woman from the same house gets trained. And the third year, we work for 3 years in one village. The third year, the third woman from the same house gets trained. This way, 3 people in 8 people household are trained. So these 3 women then change everyone's mindset. It is a very technical, but it actually has been working really well.
And when you say a house, what are you referring to? It's not a home, right? I mean,
a family. For example, in Pakistani government, a family consists of 8 people averagely. So we believe, even though a lot of times it's more than that, but we believe that if you train 3 women per an average of 8 people, they are able to change people's mindset, their family's mindset more quickly than training just 1 person.
And then the rest of the community from there, right?
Yes. So every house, 3 women are trained, and then the whole community slowly changes, because these women are responsible for their own families in the beginning. And somehow when one family changes, they change the other, and slowly everybody changes. We keep going back to them after 3 to 4 years, and we are astonished to see what a big difference it is from the time that where they were ready to kill their daughters to the time when they actually want to educate their daughters and not marry them off at a young age. It's really amazing to see.
That would be incredible to have it here, as well as entrepreneurship and making them able to earn their own money.
Exactly.
And they earn it basically from home, right?
Yes. So I love this concept. I wonder if you've heard about so there's this book I love from my mentor called Paul Pollock. He wrote a book called Out of Poverty, which means I think he became the first man who brought 19 million people in India out of poverty by creating local economies, local markets. He said that we don't have to reach out to Western markets. We don't have to reach out to international community to sell something. We can actually create products that sell in the villages, no matter how poor everybody is. Like the example of the woman who was selling bangles, she knew that other women are going to come to her. And there's another example of a woman who bought 1 goat. We gave her a little, I think we gave her $60. She bought 1 goat, and then she started selling the milk. She saved the money. She got another goat, and soon she had a lot of goats, and she became the most famous yogurt lady in the village. So this is how the local economy kind of prospers through people.
It's fantastic. Okay, I know that lots of us are going to want to speak to you soon.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much.
It has been a great conversation, and we're really honored to have had you here with us.
I'm very honored to talk to all of you. Thank you so much, everyone.